First of hello, Cam, and welcome to Finland.
Hey,
It's
thank
been
you.
some time that you've been here.
Yeah,
last
it's
time.
been a while. Yep.
So today, the name of the game is gonna be screaming and growling and doing some extreme vocals. So
Okay.
are you ready to talk a bit about yourself?
Of course, sure. Yep.
The first question actually goes that do you recall when you heard metal or some kind of heavier rock for the first time?
Yeah, I'd probably say it was 1983, maybe. I was still in high school. I come from a punk background more than a metal background. I was really big into the punk that was around in the 80s. Misfits is a huge influence for me
Okay.
in the early days. Really gravitated toward when Danzig left Misfits and he did his own band, Sam Hain.
Yeah.
I really, that's like my favorite of all the stuff he's ever done. But so I'm a big Misfits fan, big Danzig fan. I've stuck with that pretty much from the beginning. But kind of where the metal came in is I was a huge Plasmatics fan.
Okay.
Not too many people knew what the Plasmatics was. And Plasmatics had a little bit of a, more of a metal sound than the punk stuff like the Ramones or stuff like that from that era. And like Sex Pistols and all that stuff kind of got me into it back in the day when the punk stuff was. But it was the Plasmatics, hearing that and having more of and it was the Metal Priestess EP. And that's what I picked up. And even though they were kind of in the punk genre, they still have this very early crossover kind of metal sound. And I was in school, high school, and there was no punk kids, none. And all the punk kids that I knew, they were out of high school or they skipped school or they were gutter punks and stuff like that. But I went to high school in a very like suburban area. Everybody only knew like whatever was popular on the radio. It says it was the 80s. I think I remember Ozzy was popular and like maybe Rush. I remember a lot of kids liking Rush and stuff. And I was like, it's not my thing. I wanted more aggression. And then I started meeting some other people that were coming from other states that had a little bit more of a metal background. So I started hearing bands like Anvil from Canada, Razor, that kind of stuff. And I was really like, oh, this is a little bit more aggressive. This is more like the punk that I like. And it's like, and at the same time, I was listening to stuff, other punk hardcore like GBH and of course, Discharge. Discharge changed my life because I used to be a drummer. So when I heard Discharge and I heard that D beat for the first time, I wanted to play like that. That's the first thing I wanted to play. And then basically early metal was getting introduced to stuff like what really brought me into metal was Accept, believe it or not. Fast as a Shark. As soon as I heard Fast as a Shark and I heard double bass, that's the first time I ever heard double bass played that fast. Now it's slow compared to nowadays. But back then, it blew my mind. It was like, what is this? Holy fucking shit. And that's what really sunk it in. And then I started discovering more stuff like German thrash, like Destruction and, Creator when they were called Tormentor and stuff like that through demo trading. So I was doing a lot of trading, tape trading back in the day. And that's what really started bringing in metal because I traded with this one guy in New York. He would put punk on one side and metal on the other.
Nice mix.
Yeah. So he would introduce me to metal. So I'm early metal. I got right into it early, like a lot of British new wave of heavy metal. So things like Witchfinder General, of course, King Diamond, Merciful Fate and stuff like that early in the days. So it was all tape trading that got me into it.
But how did you pick up the microphone and become a vocalist?
Well, when we were in Mantis, there was myself, Chuck, and Rick. We didn't have a vocalist. And,
so somebody had to do it.
So I said, I think I could do it. Because believe it or not, at the time, Exciter came out. I saw what Dan Beeler was doing. And I'm like, he plays drums and he's the vocalist.
I could do that same.
Yeah, I could do that. So that's really how it started.
When it comes to like doing more extreme type of vocals, did you had some people that you sort of like looked up to and mimicked first, or how did it happen for you? You were obviously one of the pioneers as well.
Well, at first, because the things that we were listening to was, again, through tape trading, we got early stuff like, of course, Possessed. We got the Possessed demo. And then earlier stuff like, I got the Hellhammer demo real early. Okay. And I heard what Tom G. Warrior was doing. And I really like his phonetics. His phonetics are really unique to me, probably because he had, his accent and when he pronounced things. So for an American kid, that was, wow, that's kind of neat. So I mimicked his phonetics more than anything. And then,
I guess that was difficult.
Yeah. And then it was like everyone was doing more of a high-pitched screech vocals, like kind of like emulating what I guess Jeff Becerra started, kind of like that's where Chuck started going in that direction, you could tell.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do something deeper. I want to do something more like, and I took my influences kind of from weird places. Like my parents raised pit bulls and Rottweilers. And I used to think, what's the scariest thing I've ever heard as a kid? Well, if you've been around pit bulls and Rottweilers, and if you throw a piece of bone down on the ground and hear the sounds they make when they're going for the bone, that will send shivers up your spine. So how I started is I wanted to emulate the sounds that the dogs were making. And that's how I wanted to growl, kind of like how the dogs were growling, to give me that impression that that's what. So the vocals, death metal vocals starting, if you really think about it, go back and listen to Chris Barnes, listen to me, listen to all the guys. It's very barking like. It started more like a bark, like a dog. People then, of course, as time went on, people got to develop their own styles and make it more wide range than it is. But the early style was very like abrupt and barking like. So pretty much that's where I got it from. I got it from dogs.
When you started like doing those extreme type of vocals, were you losing your voice like all the time? And did it take a long time to figure out the right technique for it so that you wouldn't lose your voice?
Actually, no, because I guess because I trained on the drums and I knew how to breathe and I knew that everything had to come from my diaphragm, not my throat.
That helped.
That helped. So I knew that I had to just switch it from the higher screech. Actually, the screeching would ruin my throat more than the deeper vocals. The deeper vocals come from here, the diaphragm, and I felt I could do it as long as I'm not overstressing myself or trying to hear myself. Like back in the day, you didn't have good monitors, so you'd scream as loud as you could so you could just hear yourself. You would throw your voice out more. But now I've come to learn how to control it. So it's a lot about control, and relying on what I know is best and what works.
So has that come like due time or?
Yeah, it's come through time. I mean, at first, when you're a novice and you're first starting off, you have to feel your comfort zone. At first, you might scream your head off. I've screamed to the point on stage, sometimes I felt like I was going to pass out. I've just screamed and like brought the intensity. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to pass out because I forgot to breathe. Then you learn, well, you got to breathe, and you learn how to breathe. And once you learn how to breathe and you learn control, then you know your comfort zone. And you can stay within there and still stay strong.
So what kind of like early memories do you have when it comes to the first ever recordings that you did? Were you ready as a vocalist to do like a studio recording, or what kind of experience it was?
The first studio recording, and then real studio, I'm not talking about like an 8-track or something like that, probably would have been the Massacre very first demo. The Massacre demo back in 1980, at the end of 85 and 86 was when it was a real studio. I actually went into a studio and was like, oh wow, there's a mixing board. There's a,
I'm here.
So that would be back then, the very first Massacre demo.
So when it comes to the first proper tours that you did, were you ready as a vocalist to do like show after show after show, or was it like a learning experience also for you?
I think it was both. It was both. It was a learning experience because we were younger, for one, so it was exciting. So you have that excitement. And then I looked just recently at the first tour we did. Actually, I looked and saw how many dates. I'm like, how the hell did I do 48 dates? How the hell did I do that? And I'm like, I guess we did it. It was a learning experience, I guess, because of you have to build up that, But I don't remember my voice ever going out on that tour.
You had the right technique like immediately.
I think by then I did, yeah. I felt I did. Now there's sometimes, like I said, when you're straining, even now, if I try to strain and hear myself, if we don't have really good monitor systems, I'll get off stage and I'm like, oh, I blew my voice. I could tell. I was trying too hard.
But it gets back fastly.
Yes, it does. And there's little tricks, little techniques. I don't know if it works for everybody. For me, I felt that lemon tea with honey
helps.
Works. Also this is my secret. I'll show you my secret now. Ricoli. It's the secret for every vocalist. If you're a vocalist, this stuff helps. That's the secret. Even if you don't have a sore throat, Ricoli works.
When it comes to like touring, do you have a specific way to warm up and prepare for shows, or do you do any kind of warming up?
Actually, I don't do any kind of warming up. Most of the time, it's just probably because I'm with my band members. We might joke with each other. I might yell a couple times, and then that's about as much warm up as I get.
So you'll just do some yelling and see where everything
Yeah.
is at, and then it's like
kind of a comfort zone, and then I'm like, okay, I'm good.
I was gonna ask you next that are there like some specific foods or drinks that you have felt that they help you with the singing and screaming, or on the opposite side, something that you don't want to take before the show that you have felt that they harm your vocal cords somehow?
Well, definitely no carbonated beverages because it builds up gas. And it's not, it might work for Gutalax because they burp, but it's just not working.
That's their secret.
Yeah,
You just reveal it.
Yeah, it might not work for me.
But nothing like that you have felt that helps you.
Not really, not before the show. It's like I said, after the show, maybe some honey tea, some tea,
sort of
lemon.
for like recovery.
Right.
Obviously, during your career, you've released a lot of albums. Are there like some specific albums that you could pinpoint where you have felt that you've taken big step forward as a vocalist?
The Grotesquery first album, which is called Tales of the Coffin Born. I really felt very confident about that album. A lot of people say it's their favorite Grotesquery album. I really feel that one I outdid myself. I was very surprised when I got done with it. I'm like, wow, I actually like this. I like listening to my own stuff. It's like the one time.
That was the first time that you actually liked listening to yourself, or?
Yeah, actually, yes.
Okay. But is it like weird then hearing yourself on recordings, or?
Yeah, I guess it is. At times, sometimes I'm really critical with myself. So sometimes I'll go back and I'm like, oh, I suck on that. I'm awful on that. Why did I record it? Why did I keep that? But now I'm even more critical. Like I'll go back and I'll second judge myself. I'm like, was that good? My wife says, put it down, leave it away for 4 days, then come back to it. If you like it,
fresh air.
If you like it, then keep it. If you have questions, scrap the whole thing and start over.
So how important is the pronunciation for you, that you pronounce everything like clearly?
Yeah, I started that when I felt like everyone else was more kind of mush mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to be articulate.
Yeah.
I wanted my vocals to be articulate, like aggressive, deep, but not so deep you couldn't understand them.
So that's like super important for you.
Yeah,
today.
enunciation is pretty important.
So is there like any new music in the works for you with your bands?
Oh yeah, we just got done recording a new Massacre album.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually finished. It's done. It's ready to come out, but you have to wait for the label to tell me when it's coming out.
Will there be like vocally something new that you haven't never done?
No, I kept it pretty simple. One thing about this album that I was really adamant about is I wanted it to sound purposely dated. I wanted it to sound like it came out of the 80s rather than something now. I told the musicians, like the musicians first gave me, the same musicians that were on Resurgence gave me a new album. And I listened to it and I scrapped it. I said, no, I don't want this. They're like, why? I'm like, it sounds too similar to what we just did. I want to change. And they're like, well, how do you want to go? Do you want to go faster? Do you want to go, more brutal? I'm like, actually, no. I want to do the opposite of everyone else does. I want to go back in time. I want to make it sound like it just came out in 1989.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's what we did. I guess we progressed by degressing or regressing.
So I have a few questions left. And the second last one was that, do you remember what were your parents' reactions when they heard you first time screaming your lungs out?
Oh, yeah, I do. My mom didn't care. My mom always supported me. She said, that's you. That sounds like you were doing that before you were even in music. And my dad was like, laughed at first. My dad, he's like, is this really people like this? I'm like, yeah. Now he's proud of me. But back in the day, he was like, Dad, why the fuck does people like this? What is this? This is horrible. But now he's actually very proud of me. It's good. I'm glad to get that from my dad because my dad's a really hard man. He's a Marine, ex-Marine. And so to impress that man means I did something really good.
Last question. Any kind of advice that you would like to give to a young metal vocalist who is just about to start their journey? Anything that comes into your mind?
Yeah. First off, never listen to anybody else. If somebody tells you that sucks or tells you that's wrong or whatever, don't listen to them. Just do what you do. Don't try to emulate somebody. Don't try to be like somebody else. Just do what makes you feel good, makes you feel comfortable, regardless of what it is. Because I'll tell you what, when I started, people said that what I did sucked and it would never last.
But you were a pioneer also, so there weren't like a lot of people to compare to.
And now look, death metal, black metal is the root of all metal today. And they told us that shit would never last. So that means if you got something fresh, if you're like Gutalax and got something new, then I say just do it because there's going to be an audience for it.
Thanks a lot for taking the time to do this with us.
Okay, man. No problem. Thank you. Thank you guys.